Yeah, there's a slight size difference between the two. In fact, the old one is so small you can fit the engine inside the newer one. That is how different it is. Here's this gray, here's this gray, here's this gray. These are all different gray shades. Gemini Jets has had a history recently of producing some really bad Airbus models. And I want to show you another one. So I recently picked up the two new American A321s in the Piedmont and PSA Retro. At the same time, I got this model. This is the recent release Gemini Jets A319 with circlets with the CFM engines. And it's not great, as we're gonna take a look here. So it of course comes with their packaging that they have right now, which is pretty good. You can see the price of the model. Keep this in mind: $48. With taxes, you're looking at $50. That's about the going rate for one of these. I picked this up at the DFW store, and here is the model. So let's take a look at it and see if Gemini Jets A319 is any good. So let's take a look here at this model. Start off with the nose cone. I just did a video on the Gemini Jets A321 and how disappointing that model is. This here is the A319S, and it still has the same oddly shaped nose. It's not really quite round like how it should be. It kind of has like flat cheeks a little bit, almost like the 737, which isn't really correct. The Airbus really has a very rounded nose dome area, and this ain't quite it. It's fairly evident, particularly if you take a look at the top there, that's not quite an Airbus nose cone. So that's not really what it should look like. And yet, that's the one that Gemini Jets and JC Wings continues to roll out. This is the newest version. This is the newest A319 they made for American. They just came out last year. And it's effectively reproduction. We'll get to it in a second. But, yeah, that shape is quite disappointing. You can compare that to an NG model's A319. You can see this one is much more round, less pointy. See some nice round shape there? That's what an A319 nose cone should look like. Just nice and round, right there. Not as pointy as the Gemini one is. So, nice job by NG, not as great a job by Gemini Jets. But I did just want to point that out there. That is one thing that's been commonly criticized on these models, and deservedly so. Alright, taking a look at the cockpit windows. These actually look to be fine. Sometimes Gemini Jets struggles with getting them in the correct position, but these are alright. We have the antenna, L1 door. We have the stack ports. Those are those red squares you can see with the silver circles inside those. Those are actually heated. Those silver areas are heated plates, and that attracts, if there's ever a lightning strike, that is a discharge spot for that electric buildup. So there's two of them. You can see one below the cockpit windows, and one there right below the American Airlines logo. That's what those do. They're very important for the aircraft. Nose wheel looks very good. Actually, the landing gear on these does actually look pretty decent. They're very well detailed. They do have a nice height to them, because the Airbus is really a very tall aircraft. It should be significantly taller than 737, and it definitely gives off that effect here. That is actually a pretty nice job. You can see an antenna up top there. American Airlines billboard titles. The wing root area, as per usual, is alright, but nothing great. I mean, it looks okay. It's only better than the older Gemini Jets A319, but not by much. There's a little more detail, but not a whole lot more detail over the old Gemini Jets mold, which we'll talk about later in the video. The engines. These leave some things to be desired. These things are massive, huge engines. These are oversized. These are the CFMs, of course, and these are too big. The CFM engines are not this large on this aircraft. They should be smaller, and it's just way too big. Another issue is that this model has some wing flex, which you can see also kind of affects the landing gear. The landing gear kind of is at a bit of an angle, doesn't want to be properly straight like how it should be. And so as a result, you have your wing angled a little bit too high and your landing gear is not quite there. I don't know what it is with Gemini Jets. They just seem to constantly have this issue pop up with the wing flex on a lot of their models. This is something that seems to be a Gemini JC Wings problem that I haven't really seen any other manufacturer have. So I don't know what's going on with that, other than either the employees at the factory aren't being properly trained on how to put them in, or they're just being sloppy and letting it go by. Over wing emergency gate patch, I will say the wing is at least nicely detailed. There's a lot of detail on it, which is nice. You can see we have a VHF 2 antenna, SATCOM box, ELT antenna, and the registration, which is November 9303 Delta. And this is part of the American Airlines fleet. You can see the fleet number right below that, which looks to be 63 is the fleet number, is what it looks to be, 063. It's kind of hard to read, but yeah. That is that. We have the American Airlines logo there, which I really do like this logo. It's always been my favorite part of the current American Airlines livery. Then the APU housing detail, which is perfectly acceptable. On the starboard side, you have your forward and aft cargo containers. And so these are proceed and have bin number 1 and 2 in the front. Bin number 1 is right here and the bin 2 is right behind it. Bin 3, which is right here, and the bin 4, which is there. Bin 1 and 4 are the smallest on the aircraft. But yeah, that is this model. It's quite disappointing, and this is actually a reproduction. So they made this model a few years ago. I want to say it was like 2018, something like that. They made an American A319S in 400 scale. And that one, if I remember correct, was November 9027 Delta, was tail number on that one. And this appears to be basically an identical copy of that model, just with a different tail number. Which is really disappointing, because this model isn't that great. So if you take a look here at the citrus caliber rating, it does perform quite poorly, scoring only a 72 out of 100, which is just barely better than that Gemini Jets A321 from previously, and that's just because the wing and engine isn't quite as bad. Other than that, it's like just as bad overall. The engines are still way oversized. That's not really the size that an A319 CFM engine should be. It's really more the size of an A319 Neo engine. So one of the CFM LEAP engines is really what that's the size of, which is not correct. Of course, the wing flex isn't great, because that isn't how a model would look when it's on the ground. Of course, it makes the landing gear spread out, which isn't accurate either. The nose shape is off as well. And so that just really is the issue with this model. It's got a lot of little issues that make it not look that good for an A319. It just feels off proportionally, which is unfortunate because this model has been in production since 2017. We've been getting these baby buses, the 319s, 320s, 321s. The Neos aren't as bad. I'll be doing a video on that one as well, on a Neo. The Neos aren't quite as awful, but the CFM particular baby buses are really atrocious, and they just look like some of the worst new models you can buy today. And it's just so disappointing to see Gemini just roll out this product again and again and again when they could make something better. To give you some context for how bad the situation really is, let me bring you over a model that is nearly 10 years old. So this here is the Gemini Jets Airbus 319 that was released all the way back in the year of our Lord 2015. This thing is old. It's been around for a long time. I don't even remember when this release came out in 2015, but it was sometime in 2015. This model came out back before they were doing the CGI images. This came out when Gemini Jets released to come out, and you get the picture of the model immediately. But yeah, let's take a look at this model and see how it compares. So the cockpit area, you know, it's the older Gemini Jets mold, and you can see automatically the nose looks a little bit better. Obviously, this is on the original A319 320 baby bus mold, so the detail isn't quite there compared to some of the newer ones. And this was a modified variant of that mold that they had come out with in 2015. I believe the first release of this new mold was the JetBlue A320 in the barcode tail, which I have, released in April 2015. You can see the nose shape is actually better than the new one. And this mold featured new landing gear and antennas. So you can see there's an antenna up top there, one in the back and one on the underside, since the Gemini Jets doesn't really believe in anymore. It still had the single piece wing mold. As you can see, there's a seam there because the wing is one piece. Both wings are one piece, whereas newer molds use two-piece wings where each wing is slotted into the fuselage. That tends to have a more realistic effect to it. And so that's this one here. Overall, you can see there are some differences. The wing area isn't quite as detailed. The wing isn't quite as detailed, but still similar. You see a big difference here. These are the CFM engines. Yeah, there's a slight size difference between the two. In fact, the old one is so small, you can fit the engine inside the newer one. That is how different it is. Now, the color is probably a little bit off on this. This is kind of like a bluish gray, where some more recent grays do look more realistic. The American Airlines gray is very, very difficult to get correct because it's a metallic finish, and it can look different depending on the lighting situation. So a lot of model manufacturers have really struggled over the years to get the color right. In fact, I can bring you that American A321, and it has a different shade of gray. Here's this gray. Here's this gray, here's this gray. These are all different gray shades. And that's just because, you know, it's a difficult color to get correct. But yeah, overall the detail isn't quite the same. 527 Uniform Whiskey is the tail number. But you can see that there isn't quite as much detail, but it's good for what it is. And so that's going to bring us on to the scoring for this model. So we've now put both models on the turntable. You can see the A319S down the left, and the A319 is now coming into the center here. Let's play on to scoring. This one scores at 86 out of 100, which is better than any of the newer Gemini Jets baby buses that I've scored. The only one that came close to this was the Alaska Airlines A320. I did a review on years ago, back in like 2019. That one got an 84 out of 100. But even that, you know, it's not a great score. And that's because the new mold has just had so many errors that it's not that great. And so this one, being an older model, nearly 10 years old, is better just because the mold was just more accurate. So it wasn't as detailed, which is why it doesn't get into like my more highly recommended models. This is still a fleet builder model in terms of its score. It does all the basic things right. So it's not going to be as detailed as newer models, which is really what hurts it in the scoring. But overall, it was a decently accurate A319 for the time period. And it had new landing gear and the aerials on it, the antennas. It is missing the antenna in the back. It has all three VHF antennas, VHF antenna 1, 2, and 3. So the two up top and the one on the underside aircraft, but does not have the ELT antenna. At the time, also, these aircraft did not have SATCOM boxes. So this aircraft not having one is actually accurate. And so really, outside of that, they just missed the one ELT antenna. And Gemini Jets has been putting that on their more recent models, which you can see the current A319 Neo does have that. Really, the older ones are better, unfortunately, because I really want Gemini Jets to make good models. I really do like their products. They have decent customer service, and I really like going to the airplane stop in Las Vegas, which was a lot of fun, and I hope to go to one in Miami and in Fairfield, New Jersey as well. The problem is their current Airbus mold really, really desperately needs an update. It needs a replacement with something newer and better. Both Panda models and NG models have far surpassed them in the quality of their molds. Even Phoenix models have a not horrendous baby bus mold. I have one. I have a Phoenix Wow Air A321 Neo, and that wasn't too bad of a model. However, I don't think I would score it as well as it did at the time. I think I'd give it like a 96 at the time. I don't think I'd give it that now. because it does have some inaccuracies on the A321 in particular. Gemini Jets really needs to catch up. JC Wings has made some modifications and improvements, such as the IAE engines are smaller and more accurately to scale. That mold came out in 2019. You start seeing that on the United A319. It was one of the first models that had it. And of course, I recently did the reviews on the PSA Retro, Piedmont Retro A321s. Both those models got an 80 out of 100 on the scoring system. And that is because those models are improved. They're not as bad. And they fixed a few other things with it. But they're still not as good as the old A319 mold, which you've seen pass by in front again. The older mold was just simply better. And it's unfortunate that an older mold is better than a newer one, because usually you'd think new one, oh yeah, it's going to be updated, it's going to be more accurate, and it just isn't, which is really unfortunate. So hopefully, Gemini Jets, if you're watching this video, if anyone at Gemini Jets or JC Wings is watching this video, please update your baby bus mold, because it desperately needs to be updated and be improved, because models from 10 years ago should not be getting better scores than brand new ones that have so many more details to them. So that's the end of this video. Hopefully y'all enjoyed it, and it answers the question of, hey, are the other baby buses better? The answer is not really. The A319 Neo, or what looks like an A319 Neo, only getting a 72 out of 100 is not good. I do have one more video in the series coming. We'll take a look at the Spirit A320 Neo and see how that compares, and have a discussion, and that will kind of round out this 3-video series I'm doing on the Gemini Jets baby bus molds. I've never really done videos where I gave my full thoughts on these models, and so finally I'm doing it where I finally go in depth on my thoughts on the Gemini Jets baby bus mold. Hopefully it gets replaced soon. I don't have to have this discussion again, because I really do want Gemini Jets and JC Wings to make a good product. But unfortunately, the current baby bus mold is just one that most people should avoid if possible. If you can find an alternative from another manufacturer, I highly recommend it. So that's basically it for this video. What do you all think of it? Let me know in the comments down below. With that being said, thank you all so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and God bless you.